So in this video, we're going to be going over Jack backgrounds. Now, chances are you've watched a couple Jack videos already, probably the Jack overview, maybe the Jack layout video, and this one is going to go over all of the amazing backgrounds. So background gradients, background images, fixed backgrounds, all of that really cool stuff. So without further ado, we got lots of stuff to do, so let's jump on in. So here we are in the demo file for Jack, and we are on the backgrounds page. Now this file is available for download all the time from our documentation portal on the Jack doc page. And you can also get it from the disk image that you downloaded for Jack. Now, Jack allows you to have multiple different background types. You can have no image, images, solid colors, and gradients. And we're going to go over all of these in this video. Right now, we're going to focus on solid color. Now, every stack can have a solid color background, but Jack allows you to add an opacity, which really gives you some great options for layouts. In this particular example here, I have a nice stylish kind of blueprint background. And in order to make the text legible, I added another Jack stack with a white transparent overlay on top of the background. If we didn't have this, the text that's inside this particular example would be a lot less illegible, right? You wouldn't be, or it would be illegible because you wouldn't be able to read it. But by adding a transparent overlay on top, it makes the text much more readable. So now let's jump into background images with Jack. And there are a lot of things that you can do with background images in Jack. So let's look at each one of these examples here on this page and see exactly what they do and how we've accomplished them. Now by default, like any other stack can do, you can add a tiled image. Now you'll notice first inside the Jack settings that we have a mobile image and a large image option. What this means is that when you add a mobile image, that image will be used on mobile, desktop, and tablet devices. However, when you add a large image, the mobile image will only be used for mobile now, and the large image will be used for tablet and desktop. So a lot of times what you'll want to do is you'll want to add a lower resolution image to mobile and a higher resolution background image to the large option. Now for tiled images, this doesn't really make sense because they're normally so small anyway in size that you'll just define the mobile version and then Jack will use that same exact image for all devices. Now for background images, you can also warehouse images. So if you don't want to drag and drop the image here, maybe you have an image that you want to use throughout a lot of various Jack stacks and you want to leverage browser caching, you can definitely warehouse your image and then provide URLs to the background image. So let's look at the tiled image options. So image size we have set to auto. And then image repeat, as normal, we have horizontal and vertical image repeat. But if you only wanted to if you wanted to be no repeat, you want it to be static, or you wanted to repeat only horizontally or repeat only vertically, you can definitely do that. Now for tiled images, the position doesn't really matter. If you notice as you swapping through these options, the image background is actually shifting a little bit. But really for tiled images, it doesn't really make sense for configuring a background position. It shifts the image a little bit, but not a lot. Now if we look at this example directly below it, this is where we're actually using horizontal repeats. So in this particular instance, we're only repeating this particular tile horizontally. And then we want the position to be the left top. Now let's say we wanted to repeat this down the side of the Jack stack. We can go ahead and say we want to repeat it vertically, and then we want it to go on the left top. But maybe we want it to be on the right top. And then it will start repeating the image from the right top and down. Now, if you are only going to be repeating an image vertically or horizontally, chances are you're going to want to make sure that you define a fallback color. And this is going to be the color that Jack uses for the rest of the stack that doesn't have the background image shown. The next option here is for using image size of cover. So if you set your image size to cover, the background image will actually be scaled to cover the entire background of Jack. Now, image repeat and position don't really make sense for cover images. They're kind of ignored. So those particular settings aren't really needed. Now, in this example, we'll notice that I defined different images for mobile and large devices. This was really to show you that the image is actually changing as you look at it from different browsers. But in reality, you're going to be using the same image in both, but the mobile version will just be a scaled down version so that it loads faster on mobile devices. Now, if we look at this second example of cover, we'll notice that it has a scroll behavior set to fixed position instead of the default, which is scroll with content. Now, when you set the scroll behavior to fixed position, you'll notice as I scroll, even in edit mode, as I scroll up and down the page, the image background is fixed to the browser, and the Jack content simply scrolls on top of it. This is how we can achieve the parallax effects like in our full page height example, where we have these sections of the page where the content scrolls over a fixed background. Now I want to take this time to go over the background origin. Now this option is not only for background images, but it's for solid colors, for gradients, it's for all backgrounds. However, I want to show you an example of exactly what that means here. We have the option of setting the origin of the background to be at the padding box, the border box, or the content box. So if we look at this particular example of Jack, I've added a 20 pixel border. Now I've also added a 20% opacity to it that we'll see once we look at preview. Now what we're going to be explaining here is the CSS box model. Now I've done an entire Weavercast podcast show on this, so you may want to check out that video. But let's review it again here because it's very pertinent to this. So I've previewed my page and I've opened it up inside the Safari Dev Inspector. And I'm looking at the box model for this particular Jack stack. And if we'll notice as I hover over these, we'll see that it has a border of 20 pixels and it's being highlighted. It has a padding of a percentage, okay? And then it has the content area. Those are the border box, padding box, and content box that we see inside the background origin. So when I set the background origin to be border box, what it's going to do is the background is going to start at the outside edge of the border. If I set it to padding box, it's going to set it to the outside edge of the padding box. And if I set it to the content box, the background is going to restrict itself to remain inside the content area. Let's see a couple examples. Right now, this stack is set to be padding box. So the background is set to be fully enclosed inside the border. Let's go ahead and change this to be border box. So inside my stack, I'm going to say origin of border box. And if we preview our page again, we'll notice here that the stack looks vastly different because the background has extended to the edge of the border, which the background is now bleeding through because I've added 20% opacity to the border, purely so that we can see this in action. Now, if we go back to edit mode and change our origin to content box, this is very apparent. You'll see it right away inside edit mode that this entire border or padding area here is now white because we constricted the background of this jack stack to the content area. This way, the padding area of the stack is now completely transparent. And we still have a border that is set to a 20% opacity. So if we preview this, we see that now the content here area now has the background, the padding area is fully transparent, and we still have a border that is set to black at an opacity of 20%. Okay, now let's jump into gradient backgrounds. Jack has a lot of really advanced controls for some amazing gradients. Let's look at some of them here. When you set your background type to gradient, you'll notice you have a lot of new settings show up. And these allow you to build really good gradients. For gradient style, we have linear, circular, and ellipse. And then on top of that, we have gradient themes that I've built into Jack for 2-color themes. A simple 1 color, which will take the one color, and then, disperse that color across the entire stack. We can do 2 tones, where it takes 1 color and then does 2 variations of it split down the middle. And last, we have a faded theme, which we'll look at in just a little bit. But let's go back to the 2-color. Here, once you have, if you have your gradient style set to linear, you can define your linear to, so the direction that your gradient is going from and to. So is it going to the right? Is it going diagonally to the top left? Is it going diagonally to the bottom left? Okay, so you can change the actual direction of your gradient. Now remember, with gradients, you can also use the background opacity as well. So if you want to, have, maybe a background image bleed through from another stack through the gradient, you can do that. Now, if you choose a radial gradient, you'll notice that we have radial origin options. And this works for both radial circles and radial ellipse gradients. We can actually define the origin of the circle. So in this particular example, if you want it to be at the top, kind of the top center of the kind of the radial gradient to start at the top center, I set it to be 50% and 25%. Now, if you want it to be dead smack in the middle, you would set it to 50%, 50%, and the gradient circle will start exactly in the middle of the jack stack. So you can really play with the gradients. Maybe you want it, coming from the top corner, or to simulate maybe a sun effect or something of that nature, right? But these allow you a lot of flexibility in terms of where to position your radial gradients. Now, a note about the great faded effect that we can get with Jack. Now, unfortunately, because of some of the code that's used, the faded gradient does not display inside edit mode. But let's look at what it does. We notice in this demo here that I have a background, a jack stack with a background, and then that is faded to basically a solid color white, which in this case, actually the background of my site is white. So it basically allows you a way of doing a gradient into nothing, or into what looks like into a completely transparent layout. If we flip that, you can actually make it look like you have a solid color and it's fading into a background. Basically, what we're doing here is we're taking a single color, which is white, and we're creating a gradient based on the opacity. So in this second example, I'm starting with an opacity of 100, and I'm fading to an opacity of 0. In this first example, I'm starting with an opacity of 0, and I'm fading to an opacity of 100%. So if we look at the options here, when we set the linear gradient to linear and the gradient theme to faded, we can define the faded opacity, okay, which basically allows me to go to 0%. So we'll always start at the opacity that the background is set to be, and then we'll fade to the opacity set here. So if we wanted to go to 100 to 0, we'd set the background opacity to 100 and the faded opacity to 0. But maybe you wanted to go from 100 to 50. You can set the background opacity to 100 and the faded opacity to 50. The faded stop defines the actual location where the fade will ultimately end up at 0%. So in our first example, when we reach 75%, I want the background to be at 0% opacity already. So you want this number to be lower to be the faster your fade is going to be, to nothing. Now the last feature of Jack backgrounds is the ability to animate your background. This really works amazing with tiled images especially. And it's really simple to turn on. All you simply do is inside your background settings, you check Animate Background. You can set the actual direction in which the background will animate to, and then you can choose the speed at which the animation happens. Obviously, the larger the number, the slower the animation is going to be. Now, I use this in many places throughout the Jack demo site. And in a few of the banner images, especially the Jack backgrounds, you'll notice that this particular background is set to animate. Now, a word of caution, this background is set to be a cover image. So it's not a tiled image. It is a single image that is slowly being animated across the page. Now, this is a very subtle effect because the image isn't, it's all greens. It's just, various, blurs and radiuses of green. But you do, if you pay attention, see it animating across the screen. Now, a side effect of not using a tiled image for your animated background is that if you sit here long enough, you will actually see the image get repeated, and you'll see basically a solid line eventually go across the screen. Now, I've made this background image big enough, and I've made the animation slow enough so that chances are you're not going to be on the page long enough to ever see that happen. However, it is a risk for not using tiled images with animations. Where this is most prevalent is actually in this full page height demo, where I'm animating this nice starry sky background. And eventually this too, since it is a fixed image, it is not tiled, it is not a proper tile. If we were to watch this page long enough, we will eventually see this image get repeated, and you'll see the beginning of the image mashed up with the end of the image, and it will, it won't look so great. But again, I made a calculated risk that someone is probably not going to be sitting on this page long enough to ever see that happen, because I've made the animation so long that it would take you quite a few minutes, probably 3 or 4 minutes, for eventually for you to see the edge of that image being animated. This is why in the Jack demo examples here that I show in the Animate section on the Jack Backgrounds page, these use official tiles. So they're small images that get repeated, and since tiles can infinitely scale each other, you never see any sort of break in the background. So if you can use a tiled image with your animations, I do recommend that. So, wow, did I lose you yet? That was a lot of information, right? I'm sure you're probably gonna have to come back and review some of this information, because there's just so much that you can do with Jack backgrounds, and there's so much advanced stuff in there that you can learn from. And the more you use Jack, the more these things are gonna become apparent to you, and you're really gonna start leveraging Jack to its fullest. So I hope you enjoy these videos on Jack and how to use all of its powerful settings. And I can't wait to see exactly what you build using Jack. So go forth and make your websites great. And thank you very much for joining and watching and being a great customer. So thanks very much, everybody. Bye.